Hello, everyone. We are back just to discuss what we know thus far about the Bob Chapek, Bob Iger transition. A couple of things that I want to point out that we've learned is what happened very quickly once it was decided that Bob Iger was going to come back. However, it seems like many executives have kind of went around Bob's back, probably not creamed in, and have were complaining to the boards, including particularly Christy McCarthy. So I know, she has misspoken sometimes. I guess is a nice way to say it. And so people have kind of lumped Chapek and her together. I think at least I've seen that on social. Um, but she was actually the one that kind of helped this process get along, according to reports. Um, and I think what it means is we're going to discover who was on Team Chapek and who was on Team, I'll just call it Team Disney. More worried about the longer success of the company than making Chapek look good. Um, um, and so, just getting something from JP Morgan. They like Disney stock, but are reluctant to recommend going after it right now due to the direct-to-consumer strategy unlikely to change dramatically. Um, and they expect that the 2024 direct-to-consumer subscriber targets to be cut in the next earnings call, which will be in February. And Bob Iger will luckily get the chance to um, such a chance to engage, do his favorite activity, which is engaging with Wall Street analysts on earnings call.
Can answer who's going to be his successor.
Right. Um, so I think it's interesting. First of all, it sounds like Chapek knew there was mischief happening, and I know there was rumors of that happening with Peter Rice, which is why he let Peter Rice go. Now the question is does he, if that's really how inconfident he was in his position, does Peter Rice come back? Also, you know, it sounds like Susan Arnold actually reached out to Bob Iger a couple months ago and asked what do they do, knowing the mess they were in. And so it sounds like the board didn't. I mean, the board does not look good in this situation. They
No,
just
go from 6 months ago, or 5 months ago, unanimously approving contract renewal. Like,
and
were they
now
under pressure too? When was his contract actually up?
there was pressure because he had, I think, his contract would have been up in February of 2023,
Yeah,
and
but that doesn't scream pressure to me. That sounds like a ton of time.
well, I remember that was when the Peter Rice stuff went down. So they were looking for was a vote of confidence in Bob Chapek to kind of calm the storms. They probably should have not given Bob Chapek a vote of confidence in hindsight. But you know, it's telling to me. And Susan Arnold, who is well respected, Carlisle and Procter and Gamble, that she basically went back to Bob, who was chairman before her, and said, "I need help. Like, what do we do here?" I mean, it's a testament. I would go to Bob Iger and ask for help too. That's not, he's one of the best entertainment CEOs in history, according to not just me, but like other people that are in the market. So I don't blame her for that. But um, so it seems like there's lot of cloak and dagger stuff, which means the book is going to be very exciting when inevitably it gets written. Um, but I think we've got a lot more to learn too. So it sounds like in Iger's first days was a lot of like Zoom calls with leaders, and it sounds, according to reports that I've seen, really focused on morale. I think people are, just, I don't know that he needs to be focused on morale because I think him coming. I mean, I'm seeing people dancing in the streets on my, I'm getting texts constantly about um, what uh, what the reaction that's happening internally at Disney. But we are that seems to be the first step. I think most people expect the second step to be some sort of restructuring back to a more legacy way of doing things, where it's theatrical, studios business and manage their own business, and a TV business and manage their own business without this sort of DMED rule. But we will figure all that out in the days and weeks ahead. I think just looking, we have 389 votes on our poll on Twitter, which was how do you feel about Bob Iger replacing Bob Chapek? And to get the result, I need to click something. So 79% say Iger's an improvement, 0.3% prefer Chapek, 13.8%, not an insignificant number, says ultimately won't matter, and 6.9%, nearly 7%, say unsure. So it seems
So
like
0.3% of people misclicked. Is that what you're?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's no question that Bob Iger did do missteps. I would also say that anyone that is running the Walt Disney Company is going to make missteps. We all make missteps, in our jobs. So I don't think that's exactly you can't expect perfection. And I think that's, I want to caution people is that, this is not the savior returning to lead us into the promised land. I mean, there's still a lot of difficulty in the near and long term that Disney's going to have to deal with and Bob Iger's going to have to deal with. I think this is perhaps, I was thinking a lot, we've talked about, I was in this sort of malaise because I knew Bob Chapek just, whether his lack of communication has made his position untenable. There's no question. I think Kramer hit it on the head. It was like, it's just done. Like, it's like he was, Urban Meyer at the Jaguars. Like, it just wasn't going to continue. And the question was, what happened? How do you get out of that? Whether it was corporate raiders, which Disney was facing, whether it was, just trying to find an outside person that could kind of reset the business. But I think I didn't see the Iger as an option, so I didn't think of it. And much like many of Iger's decisions, I didn't think of it. But then once he did it, I go like, oh, this makes perfect sense. So I think it's working to. I think this is the best outcome. Ideally, we wouldn't be in this mess. Obviously, ideally, we wouldn't have had a pandemic and a complete collapse of the direct-to-consumer business, from a financial standpoint. I mean, Disney went from 70 times earnings as the stock value, like a tech company, to 20 times earnings, which is like a normal company. The earnings, were not as good or bad. That sway wasn't that bad. Actually, Disney had earnings growth, but it's just the way they value it has changed because they see there being as streaming as being an untenable business. So now there's talk of like Disney purchasing Netflix, selling off Hulu, or just dramatically doing something crazy. And I don't know that we'll know what the crazy is for a while because Bob Chapek's smarter than me, and he'll come up with a better solution than I can.
Iger.
Yeah. Did I say
You gotta
Chapek?
keep your Bob straight.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Bob Chapek is probably also smarter than me, to be fair. It's a hard job, but Bob Iger is very smarter than me.
So I have a question for you. The thing that keeps going back in my head, you said like, ideally we wouldn't be in this situation. So I have to think back in time to when we now get a distant second place shocking decision that all of a sudden Chapek is CEO. Do you think in his mind, in Iger's mind, at that point, that next however many months they were really going to be shadowing, they would just give him the title? Or do you think that it was at him finally, okay, I found my successor, I'm just going to check out and finish my contract, but you can handle the stuff I don't want to do and I'll do the things I want to do? Or did you think that he was planning on it being more of a partnership for the last few months and then was kind of pushed aside?
Well, I think it got complicated because the creative decisions stopped because they weren't able to make any creative content. And so that's what Iger was going to focus on. And I think Iger felt slighted, as I understand, when basically he was saying, okay, we have one of the most unprecedented disasters in the company's history. And yeah, obviously I should take a bigger role in it. I mean, I think what I don't understand in this is why Chapek would be upset with that. Why wouldn't you want the greatest entertainment CEO of all time to help you navigate one of the most challenging times of all times? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But that kerfuffle, I don't know what would have happened if the company just, had a regular pace of production, didn't have to kind of get into maintenance mode. And probably Bob Chapek thinks he's good at maintenance mode, right? I mean, the parks business was managed well through the pandemic, but I think he didn't appreciate the fact that Bob Chapek I mean, Bob Iger could also manage through the maintenance mode pretty well too.
I
And it
also
just
still
doesn't make
find it
any.
hard. I still find it hard to believe that Iger didn't have more foresight. Like I know he must know more about China, like what was happening in China. Like he has got executives there and stuff. So I don't know. I still feel like he knew more than he maybe. I don't think
Oh,
anyone could have completely understood what was going to happen. But
I think if they waited another month, if the timing of making it him CEO, even 3 weeks, this would not have happened the way it did. I think by the time they got the ball rolling, because basically it was at Christmas time that they decided that this was going to happen, and then it was done in February. I think by the time Bob made that decision, he knew he had an inkling of the problems. I don't think he really knew the extent until maybe a week later. I think if this had happened a week later, this might not have happened. But it's the timing is sort of unfortunate for everybody involved. And I don't know what would have happened to Disney if there was no pandemic. I don't know how Bob Iger would have handled it. I don't know how Bob Chapek would have handled it. You wouldn't have had the collapse of the theatrical business, which forced them to go all in on direct to consumer. I mean, there was pressure from geniuses like Rich Greenfield, who were like, "Oh no, just put everything on," which is in hindsight terrible just advice, but they didn't
I
have a
haven't
choice.
checked his Twitter today. That's got to be fun.
Yeah, I bet it is. But yeah, it's and I mean, and this is the problem that I keep saying um, over and over again. You got to manage Wall Street, but don't listen to them because they will tell you to do things like go all in on direct to consumer um, versus versus keeping the theatrical business. I don't know how that would play out when if there was an option to do theatrical and if there wasn't this sort of societal change to everyone was in their homes. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with theatrical because people got used to just putting everything on streaming. I don't know if they're going to. I don't know how Strange World's going to do theatrically. Um, I look forward to finding out. I hope it does well because I'll make everyone's lives a lot easier. I mean, we went from a time when Disney was creating the most content it ever did. Stuff that the Mickey Mouse documentary, Imagineering story, stuff that we love as fans. That is probably going to get cut in the future just because they're going to reduce the amount of content they make. But I don't know. What would have, I really don't know. I mean, and I think anyone who says they know is wrong because that's so many variables would have had to happen to change all that. And I don't know how this affects the stuff going on with the Reedy Creek Improvement District. I don't know how this affects the parks investment. I don't know how this affects dividends and sort of returning investment to money to shareholders. Obviously, the interest rates, which it sounds like are still going to go up, really puts a crimp in flexibility that Disney has to just kind of borrow money to kind of fund things until 2024 when they expect the streaming business to go up. Also, we're about to have a price increase and then ad-supported Disney Plus, where we don't know where the ARPU, the average revenue per user, is going to end up because we don't know how many people are going to take ad-based Disney Plus or how many people are going to pay the extra price. We don't know how many people are just going to leave. So, there's so many questions, even just forgetting Bob Iger. Like, there was questions on how Disney was going to shake out with all this change. And they kind of warned that next quarter wasn't going to be the thing. I mean, I don't know if, he's going to restore Disney Plus Day to its rightful place in November. I mean, there's all these sorts of questions.
No, I think that the price increase is one because but it's also easy to be like, oh, well, Iger wanted to price it this way and now it's priced at this. And it's like, okay, but things have changed since then too. This isn't to say that he's going to want to immediately come in and be like, oh, I still got 3 weeks. We'll go ahead and cancel that. We'll roll out the ad tier, but we'll make it $5.99 or something like that. Like, yeah, just because he felt that way a few years ago when they debuted doesn't mean that things haven't evolved since then.
And I think you're bringing an excellent point. I think it is a huge mistake to presume that Iger's going to have the same strategy now than he did 2 years ago. The whole entertainment business has changed, and um, if you give me a minute and if you can vamp, I'm gonna the 8K filing just came out. I'm just gonna read it real quick.
Okay. So for those who don't know, hopefully this SEC filing will give us some more insight into what Iger's salary will be, what Chapek's severance could be potentially. He did just sign a 3-year contract back in June, so there'll be some sort of buyout situation there. So we've been waiting for this. We are kind of expecting it earlier this morning, even before the market opened, but obviously it's just come now, which I think the market just closed not too long ago, so that would probably be that timing. So hopefully we'll have some more insight. Did you find anything yet, Ben?
So it sounds like Bob Chapek's severance is going to be about $20 billion, a little over that.
20
it looks
million?
like, I'm sorry, 20 million. Yes, 20 million. 20 million. Bob Iger's base salary is going to be $1 million, and he will be able to get bonuses, which is a target of $1 million. So it sounds like his compensation is going to be much lower than it was when he was here previously. So $2 million, or is the target, could be less. And each fiscal year, he's going to be granted a long-term incentive award with a target value of 25%. 60% will be actually all of it's going to be in form of some sort of stock. 60% in stock units and 40% stock options. Fully vesting of the stock options happens in 2024. At the end of 2024, Mr. Iger can be terminated at cause, which is probably.
But 20 million for Chapek, and that doesn't think that's just his severance, not his pension and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, his pension would have already been. I don't know if he was eligible for a pension plan. I don't know. He would have been based on when he started. So he would still get that, but that's not going to be.
Right, that's separate from.
I mean, it's just any employee who leaves.
And do you remember what the terms of his contract, like we know what his compensation was for last year, but we don't know the terms of his contract when it was renewed?
We do. I just don't have it in front of me because I'm reading this other filing.
So obviously that's something that they call out in the general press release that they renewed it. So. That's interesting about Iger coming in for. I mean, he's always had like a modest like base salary. It was always the bonuses that 20x his earnings or more. So it's interesting that it's kind of doing almost like a pro bono. I don't know how you can call $1 million pro bono, but
Well, I mean, he's still entitled to a fairly significant stock bonus, but that is based off of solving the problems. And I think he's definitely coming. He definitely lowballed them here. I'm reading also. Obviously he's eligible for medical and all that stuff, and there's nothing really here. There's no real golden parachute outside of his contract, which is normal at any time you sign a contract, because that's why you sign a contract. But there's not like get paid more to quit. It's an unfortunate thing in the past. So that's kind of what we've been waiting for. So it's interesting. It's interesting too. They did say that they terminated Bob Chapek without cause. So he will. It's if they have cause, like he committed a felony or was egregiously bad, then they could do it, but this is obviously they're not gonna. They don't probably in an effort to not have this dirty laundry aired in a courtroom. They're just going to do it. They're going to do it. I want to look at what Bob Iger's compensation was.
So it says without cause. Is there forgot what I was gonna say. But does it kind of explain, not explain per se, but sorry, I can't think of what I'm trying to say here. So,
well, I'll tell you this. So it looks like in 2021, the last year, Bob Iger made 46 million. So if the target here is really 27 million, 2 million plus the stock, it's about half of what he was making, a little bit more than half of what he was making previously. So, oops, I put the wrong link. So I don't know. I find this. I don't know if anyone's going to notice this, but I think it's kind of interesting that I'm not going to say 27 million is nothing, but that it's almost like he's kind of trying to do a make good. Like, my bad, I'll come in and you pay me the minute. Nothing stupidly low for being a CEO of the wealthy company. I mean, if anything, this whole experience shows you the value that all those people are like, oh, he's overpaid. It's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah.
And,
and what was Chapek's last compensation? I know we published that whenever that information came out.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look. So he made 31. So obviously the
sure headline be like Bob Iger to make less than Chapek.
Well, we don't know because we don't.
No, I know. I'm joking.
But it's interesting. And we talked about in the earlier show about how how does the mistake of Bob Chapek going to impact the choice he makes for the next CEO, and I'm curious to see how that goes down.
Well, I guess the mistake he'll learn, and maybe there'll be you won't just hand the guy the reins a month before a pandemic. And I figure they'll probably change. If he does find the right person, there'll be more of a not interim, but like a tandem. An actual handing over instead of. I guess the arrangement that he thought he was getting, potentially thought he was getting, just wasn't tenable. So you need to have something where it's like, no, you're actually going to shadow me for however long, and then like a probationary period is the phrase I'm looking for.
Well, and I think too, it's you look at what happened with Tom Staggs, where he was given sort of the heir apparent role, didn't work out, but that's what we kind of expected to happen next, right? Like naming a president or COO, and then. But something, it's almost like something personal must have happened to Bob Iger, where he's just like, I'm done. And, we got the sense that he was done. We weren't getting, listening to him talk, he was ready to go. I think now he's regretting that. But, maybe the rushed, because I don't know that Bob Chapek could have been saved, so to speak. But we probably would have realized he wasn't the right guy at some point. So, but by making him CEO as opposed to some sort of trial position, really didn't work out. And so I'd expect that they go back to that, which if they do, gives them a little bit more flexibility because they can pick someone who's maybe, someone like Bob Chapek, who was a black horse, like everyone was looking at the media side and Parks. We talked about how this probably makes it harder for Josh to get the job because it's going to look like, oh, well, the last time we got the Parks guy, he couldn't manage talent. Now, you and I know that probably Josh would be better at, nearly anyone would be better at that than Bob Chapek. But that, does Wall Street know that? Is it worth the fight to teach him that? But if you give him some sort of interim role, or is he going to do like he did before and just swap everybody around?
I was going to say, the Stags Rizzulo switch.
So there's a lot that we're gonna learn in in the coming weeks. In other hiring news, we have a director for Blade.
That's good.
Yan Demange, who did the Love Country pilot, is going to be the new director. And the new writer is Michael Starbury, who worked on When They See Us. So not Bob. Other people besides Bob Iger got hired today or yesterday.
Was he on the lot today? Do we know? Did he?
I don't know where he is. It seems like a lot of stuff's happening through Zoom. I know we talked previously about how there's supposed to be a shareholder meeting. A board of directors meeting today. One thing I think is interesting, if you go to the About Us page of Disney.com, where they talk about the leadership, Bob Iger is named CEO, but he's not on the board as of yet. And so I don't know what the plan is with that. Typically, the CEO is on the board. They gave that position to Chapek pretty quickly. He was not on the board at first, and then he became there. It sounded like almost like a temper tantrum because he was like they needed to kind of show confidence in him when he was starting to have a disagreement with Bob Iger. But as of now, neither him nor the board member that was nominated by Dan Loeb's Third Point Capital is on their website. Now, I don't know. I think it's pretty clear that Bob is not at this point on the board because there would have been an SEC filing, but and it's not in the press release. Doesn't mean he'll say that way. It might be a process, but I think.
But it seems clear he's not going to be chairman.
Yeah, correct. Susan Arnold will remain chairman. And obviously, he's on for 2 years. That doesn't mean it's going to last 2 years. I mean, there is an end date, obviously, just like there's with everybody. But we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, honestly, we can speculate all we want, but Juby has a good point about Jobs founded Apple, Hutchins to Starbucks to start. Has this happened with a huge established company? I think it has. Where a good CEO has come back, either not necessarily in the same position, but comes back as a chairman or something to kind of turn things around. I don't have an example off the top of my head of a boomerang CEO, but I
keep mentioning Tonight Show, but people don't like the implication that Chapek is Conan. So.
What's that?
I said I keep pointing to the Tonight Show and calling him Jay Leno, but people don't like how that implies Chapek is Conan.
Yeah, but I think, I can think of J.C. Penney had that, Charles Schwab, but it's uncommon because usually when CEOs leave, there's a reason they left, and they aren't inclined to come back. But I think it's a testament to Disney being a special company where the relationships matters. Gio says maybe Eisner will come back next. Stranger things have happened. I will agree to that. I don't see that happening, but who knows anymore.
And his first announcement will be a third park in Paris.
It's interesting. We talked about the pullback from the parks that was sort of necessitated, or was said to be necessitated. By the pandemic. I wonder if they'll kind of go back to the Iger massive expansion strategy. But in any case, we should probably wrap up. Any last words, Kyle?
Nope. I just fascinated to see what happens. I do hope we all like to think of Disney as being sunny and everyone getting along. I hope that it doesn't get too like McCarthy inside of Disney in terms of smoking out those who were perceived to be Chapek loyalists or whatever. Like you'd hope adults can be adults, but it probably
Well, it's
won't.
also you want to be I mean, I think that's part of the problem here. I mean, that was the problem with Chapek is like you can want what's best for the company. That means doing what's right, not necessarily worrying about which team you're on. I mean, you should be on Team Disney, not Team Bob Chapek, Bob Iger, Bob whatever. I mean, you got to do what your boss wants. But I think, I think, and we saw Bob Iger come in with, after Eisner, and it wasn't, there were certain people that maybe he didn't like. I don't think it was because they were Eisner people. It was because he didn't think they were good, and they left. And it'll be interesting to see who comes, if anybody, see who comes back. From the people sort of who didn't pass the Chapek allegiance test.
Has Peter Rice found a new job? I don't even remember.
No, I don't believe so. And probably waiting to see how this played out because there's no question he was in the business, right? Like, I mean, just gossiping. You would have heard like, "Hey, yeah, I talked to the board. This is crazy." I mean, that'd be my guess based off of humanity. But I shouldn't say I know that for sure, except people are people. Okay, well, that's gonna be it for me today because I got to get on a plane and get back home. But we will. You guys got. I think our next scheduled show is Barely Necessities tomorrow at 4. But I'm sure we will have more news breaking between now and then. So stay tuned. Watch us on LPTV, part of the Go Network. Watch us on LPTV, laughingplace.com/TV. That way, every time we get news or analysis, you'll hear it first, as well as you'll get sort of news and information throughout the day, 24/7, regardless of if we're here talking or not. So thanks so much, Kyle, for joining. Thank you, audience, for joining, and we'll see you soon.